Hello, my name is Muhammad Syahid bin Rusli, and for my part, I will explain about our group's program that for the assignment 2. And the problem that we came up with is for an engineer to display the value of work done by energy devices. So there are three types of energy devices that we had put into our program, which are the nozzle, turbine, and compressors. Uh, these three engineering devices are the one that we had learned in the thermodynamics subject. And the main formula to calculate the work done is in this screen, if you can see. The Q stands for the heat, W is the work which we required to find, M is the mass, H1 and H2 is the enthalpy, V1 and V2 is the velocity, and the Z1 and Z2 is the height, and the last one is G, which is the gravitational acceleration. And for nozzle, the theory shows that there will be no work done by the system. So if the user chooses this option, it will only display no work done. And the second one is turbine. So if the turbine take consideration of potential energy, then the program will prompt height. And if the turbine didn't consider the potential energy, then the program will not prompt the height. And the third one is the compressor. For the compressor, both kinetic energy and potential energy will be ignored. So that means there will be no V2 and V1, and there will be no Z2 and Z1 for the compressor. So it left with enthalpy, mass, and heat release. So this program will allow user to set how many devices they want to calculate, and this program will also calculate the average work done. The average work done by one of these engineering devices, and the work done will be displayed with other value in a text file, which name will be named as assignment2.txt. And the program will allow the user to repeat until the user itself choose to stop the program. And so this is all the problem that we came out with, and I will move on to the flowchart of this program. So for the flowchart of this program, uh, as usual, it will started with start in the oval shape and declaring the variables. So after declaring the variables, we use the function of calc average, because the calc average function is to calculate the average work done by the by the system of each engineering devices. So to make our life easier, we use this function. So this function consists of the formula of sum, which is how many work done by the system, and we divide by the numbers, which the variable numbers is for how many value of engineering device, whether it is whether it is a nozzle, compressor, or a turbine. So next, the program will prompt and get the option. The option is a variable for the user to choose which engineering devices is they want to calculate. So for example, if option is A, it means that the engineering devices chooses by the user is nozzle, and B stands for for turbine. So if the user chooses turbine, then the program will proceed for the turbine calculations. And if the user chooses C, which stands for compressor, then the program will proceed with calculating the work done by the compressors using the appropriate formula. So this option is the one where the user decide which engineering devices. So for to make the program repeat and repeat, so the we use the while loop to make the program repeat. So as long as this statement is false, then it will keep on repeating. So it will keep on repeating what? It will keep on asking for option. So we move on. If option is A, then the program will just display no work done, as we discussed earlier. For nozzle, there will be no work done by the system. So the program will just display no work done, and that's all. So after displaying the work done, it will loop back into this parallelogram shape, which is the prompt and get option. So it will prompt and get another option. So if the user chooses B, then B is the option for turbine. So after choosing B, the program will prompt and get choose. The choose is a variable for which we take consideration of whether there are potential energy or not in the system. So if there is yes, the user chooses Y, which stands for yes, then the program will include high in the calculation. Meanwhile, if the user chooses N, then there will be no high in the formula. So after prompt and get choose, the program will prompt and get numbers. So these numbers stands for the number of engineering devices, the number of, in this case, the number of turbine in the system. So for if the user choose N earlier in the choose of variables, then the program will prompt and get heat, mass, enthalpy, and velocity, and then it will be put into the formula. And after calculating, it will loop back into this statement, which is while I is less than numbers. So as long as this statement is true, which I less than numbers, it will keep on prompt and get for heat, mass, enthalpy, and velocity for each of these devices, which taking consideration of how many turbines are there in the system. Then after this statement became false, then it will use the function that we said earlier, which is calc average is equal to sum of the numbers, to calculate the average work done by the system. So it will calculate the average work done, and then we'll proceed to this another loop, which is to display each one of the work done by the turbine inside the system. Because as we all know, the numbers represent how many turbines are there, and each one of these turbine have a different heat, mass, enthalpy, and velocity value. So this loop is set to display each one of these turbine work done by the turbine, and and yeah, and it will proceed to display average work done. So after displaying the average work done, it will prompt and get option back. So we can just prompt and get option B again, and if the user chooses Y, which is yes, taking consideration of potential energy, the only difference between taking consideration of potential energy and not taking consideration of potential energy is, as I stated earlier, the program will prompt for the height and for if the user taking consideration of potential energy. But if there is no potential energy, then the program will not ask for height. So using the same formula, which is this formula, the program will calculate the work done, and the same process, it will calculate the average, and uh, depending on this statement, as long as this statement is true, then it will keep on loop until it fulfill the numbers of turbine inside the system, and then it will calculate the average. And while this another loop is to display each one of the turbines inside the system, uh, like I stated before. And after displaying the work done, which average work done, which calculated by this function, it will keep on loop back into prompt and get option. And if the user doesn't enter S, then it will ask again. So if the user want to calculate for the compressors, the user will enter C, and it will prompt and get numbers. And just like usual, numbers is the how many value of compressors inside the system, and it will enter this loop, which is while I is less than numbers. And as long as this statement is true, then the system will prompt and get heat, mass, and enthalpy. So why there is just three of these is because the if we can see it here, for compressors, both kinetic and potential energy will be ignored. So this kinetic energy and potential energy will be ignored. So the value required is just enthalpy, mass, and the heat release. So what we want to find here is the work done. So it will only from these three values, which are heat, mass, and enthalpy, and it will enter into the formula that I showed before and enter the same loop. So as long as this statement is true, it will keep on repeating until the statement becomes false. So it will use the same function of cal average to calculate the average, and it will enter another loop which is the same, but the function is to display the work done for each one of the compressors. And after it displayed each one of the compressors values, it will then proceed to display the average work done calculated by the function of cal average, and it will keep on entering the same loop of prompt and get option. So until the user entered the S value to stop this program, by then, only by then, the program will end. So if let's say if the user entered wrong input, it will not just stop the program, but it will enter the same loop of prompt, and the program will just prompt and get another option. So that is the flowchart for this program. Uh, I will pass this video next to Muhammad Imran bin Yusuf to explain about the coding for this program. So that's all from me, I think, and thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Muhammad Imran, and now I will be presenting the code for calculating the average work done. So now we will be looking at the code itself. So this code from line 6 to 12 is to calculate the average of the work done after the main calculation has been done in the main program, main code. So this is where the calculation the average calculation will be used after the main calculation and the main code has been run. So this at the tree of the main code. And now we'll be moving on to the next code. So this is a few lines for the declaration of variable and declaration of elements will be used in the main code. So first we'll have char, which is character for option and choose, and then float for nozzle, diffuser, turbine, and compressor and average for the work done. And then we'll be having an array float for Q, W, M, H1, H2, V1, V2, Z1, Z2 value for the calculation of the work done. And then we'll be having constant float G equal to 9.81, which is for acceleration of gravity. And then we'll be having integer numbers and then off string out file. So after the code have run, then it will save all the value into a single file, which is the outfile.txt in the drive. And now first the program will prompt the user for the option: A for calculating for nozzle, B for calculating for turbines, and C for calculating the compressor. So in this program we'll be utilizing the while do loop. So this the do and while. So while option is not equal to S, the program will still prompt from the user if we want to calculate for nozzle, turbine, or compressor. If it S, it will stop this program. So now if the user input A for calculating the nozzles, the program will show theoretically no work done by the nozzle and will prompt for a new calculation from the user. So now if the user input option B, which is for calculating the turbines, so the program will ask for potential energy, is it will be ignored or not, and then it will ask for how many devices you want to enter, and then if the potential energy ignore is yes, then it will run this main code. So for the main code, it will be under the for loop, which is for if the user want to calculate multiple device. So if the user input Y for the potential energy ignore, it will run this code and will use this formula to calculate the work done by the turbine. And then the difference of this formula and this formula is that in here that the program will not prompt for the Z value, which is the height for the potential energy. So this when the potential energy is ignored, so there is no height involved in this calculation. So after the calculation is done, it will run this function, which is this code to calculate the average of the work done. And then after the average of the work done is calculated, so the program will write all of this, which is the heat use, release, mass, initial enthalpy, final enthalpy, initial velocity, final velocity, and work done of the turbine in the text file, which is the out file.txt. And then under the each of these word will be the value of each of this calculation. And then after that, the below one will be the average of the work done. And now moving on, if the user input N for the potential energy ignore, so it will be prompting the same thing, but a little bit of extra, which is the initial and final height for the potential energy. So after the calculation of the work done, it will run this function to calculate the average work done, and then it will run the same thing, which is to write this heat use, release, mass, etc, etc, and then it will show the value of each of the prompt value and then the work done of the turbine, and then it will show the average work done for the multiple turbine. So now we'll be moving on to the next option, which is C. So if the user want to calculate the compressor, it will input the C, and then the program will tell the users that for most cases of the compressor, kinetic energy and potential energy is ignored, and then it will ask the user how many devices you want to enter. So same stuff, and then it will be under the for loop if the user have multiple devices to be calculated. So for calculating the compressor, so first it will ask the user to enter the heat release, which is Q, and then after that enter the mass, and then initial and final enthalpy, which is H1 and H2, and then it will use this formula to calculate the work done of the compressor. So after calculating the work done of the compressor, it will run this function to calculate the average work done of multiple devices, if it is so. And then after that it will run the same thing, just to write all the value that we inserted and calculated in the txt file, and then it will show the value of each of the inserted value, and then it will show the average work done for the compressor. So if the user input something else, which is maybe D or small letter C or A, it will show the wrong input. Please enter the input that based on the option only, and will prompt a new one from the user to input. So after each of the calculation, it will ask this if the user want to calculate some more, and if the user want to stop the program and save all the value calculated and inputted in the txt file. And then if the user input S, so while option is not equal to S, it will run this program. So if the user insert S, it will automatically end the program and save all the value after that. So that's it for the program, and now we'll test the program. So now we'll be calculating the first device, which is nozzle, which is A. So we'll be inserting A, and then theoretically no work done by the nozzle, so we'll stop this program for now. So now we'll be moving on to the next option, which is B, to calculate the turbine. So now we'll be inputting B, and then we ignore the potential energy for now, and then we'll be calculating one device. So heat use 300 K, and then the mass is 20 kg. Initial and final enthalpy, so 1000 for initial, and then 3000 for the final, and then initial and final velocity, which is 10, and then we'll put 30. So now we'll stop this program and see the result in the txt file. So now we'll see the device that we calculated for, and then every single value that we inserted: heat use, mass, initial enthalpy, final enthalpy, initial velocity, final velocity, and then the work done that has been calculated. So the average of work done is the same because we just insert just one value, one device that we want to calculate it. And now next we'll be calculating for turbine also, but now we'll be not ignore the potential energy and how many device. Maybe we'll put 3. So heat release is 300K, and the mass 20, enthalpy 1000, 3000, 10 for the initial velocity, and 30 final height, which mean that maybe 4 for the initial, and then 7, and then heat release for second 400K, and then mass maybe 40, and then the enthalpy maybe 2000, and then 5000, and then the initial and final velocity, which is 40 and 60, and then enter the initial and final height, which is maybe 6 and 10, and then for number 3 maybe we put 600,000, then 50 for mass, initial and final enthalpy, maybe we'll put 4000, and then 6000 for the final, and then we'll put 60 for initial and then 80 for final, and then we'll put 9 and then 14 for the last, and then we'll stop this program and see the result in the txt file. So this is the result of the each of the calculation and the value that we input. So each of the value that we input for the turbine is in here, and then the work done for the calculation is also here, and then the average also is calculated here and has been shown here. And now we'll be moving to the last option, which is C for the compressor. So let's input C, and then we will say to mean that more cases of compressor, kinetic energy and potential is ignored, and then how many devices you want to enter, maybe let's say 2, and then enter the heat use and release for the first device. So let's say 200,000, and then 20,000, 2,000. Heat use for the second one, maybe 400,000, and then mass use 40, and then initial and final values enthalpy, which is maybe 3,000 and then 5,000. And then we'll stop this program to see the result in the txt file. So this for the result for the compressor. So we can see that value that we input and then calculated by the program, the work done calculated for each of the device, and then the average done for the all device that has been calculated, which is 2 of them. So now I will be showing to you if the user insert the wrong input, which means small letter A, so the program will ask the user to enter the new input based on the option only, which is the A, capital A, B, capital C, and then capital S to stop this program. So I think that's it from the code. So thank you very much for watching.